According to these state records, we've learned that he actually has 2 companies registered to this address on 21st Street. I'm going to step out of the way here, though, so you can get a look at some of the damage this explosion caused. These animals could have been crammed in the back of these trucks with the doors closed for nearly 7 hours. The parking lot here at the Villa Town Motel lit up again as fire crews are still working hours later to contain these flames. There's new details this morning in the ongoing controversy surrounding the Lubbock Medical Examiner's office. Now, I know you actually make frequent trips to the border and into Mexico, so you've experienced a lot of this that we're discussing firsthand. Can you tell us a little bit about what you guys really do? We took a look at all of those statistics. We're going to break it all down for you tonight on KAMC News at 10. There's thousands and thousands of entries, most of them things like email and Google, but when we took a closer look out here on the lake, it's calming down a bit now as we get closer to sundown. People are heading home for the day, but earlier today, game wardens were out. Neighbors heard those gunshots in the middle of the afternoon on Wednesday, and when police arrived, they found a man lying in a front yard, barely breathing. People in the area say it was just terrifying when that car jumped the curb, first actually hitting a telephone pole, or what used to be a telephone pole. Some breaking news overnight. A serious crash near train tracks has authorities shutting down the railroad there. Some of the things that the game wardens are patrolling for are pretty obvious, but there's some other things that you might find on Craigslist that don't seem so bad. All it takes is stepping off that curb. You're probably stepping into a puddle of slush and water that looks a little bit like this. And when that starts to freeze tonight, that is what has those emergency management officials concerned. When a fire starts, every second matters.
Each of our engines carry 500 gallons of water. We have 4 engines come at a time.
Most fires can be put out with just one, but if they can't?
When we're en route to the fire, dispatch tells us, okay, there's a hydrant at this corner, this corner, this corner, and this corner.
We're going to find another hydrant. This one's out of service.
There's no time to waste searching for a working water source. So around town, you may see some of our Lubbock Fire Department out and about doing this. And if you're wondering what they're doing, well, they're just trying to make sure that all of our fire hydrants are working exactly like they should. With more than 6,800 hydrants, it's a lot to keep track of. Testing the pressure, how easily they start flowing, and even making sure that hydrant is still there.
Could be that it got ran over by a car and nobody ever knew.
So they check annually. As of the day we requested the data, finding around 92 out of service across the city. It's a part of keeping their top rating from the Insurance Services Office. And that's when the water department steps in. First, marking them clearly,
so that they would know that there was an issue with the hydrant and not to use it. So to save those seconds is a big deal.
Then getting them fixed.
65 moving parts in it, so it's not just a big piece of steel.
Typically, that takes just a few days. Although we found at least 14 hydrants with notes saying they were still broken from last year. But the water department says don't worry.
You can look down the street either way and probably see another one close by.
The way our city's designed is yet another safeguard.
With that spacing of about 300 feet, there's going to be several fire hydrants on your block, so there should not be anything to worry about.
Now, just last year, they implemented a geographic information system to map out all the hydrants in the city. Now, they say this will help the fire department and the water department better communicate about what's working and what's not. They hope by next year to have this system totally streamlined and all the kinks worked out to help the 2 departments better communicate. Just a few months until the next Texas legislature gavels in with some big initiatives on Texas Tech's agenda: a dental school, a mental health institute, and most importantly, a vet school planned for Amarillo, an initiative Robert Duncan championed.
Those initiatives really help bring our system into national prominence.
But in the middle of those preparations, he suddenly retires. Many blaming Board of Regents Chair Rick Francis.
While he was behind the firing of Chancellor Duncan, you know, when you got a snake, the first thing you do is chop off its head.
It is time for a change in leadership.
His resignation, another big shakeup. But many speculate there are bigger forces influencing these decisions.
I, for one, will never understand why Bob Duncan was forced to resign.
Former Regent Wendy Sitton says the vet school's been in the works for years since she was on the board.
But we could never get it off the ground, and I think it's because A&M, you know, is a very powerful school, a wonderful school, but a good lobby. And the thing that's so interesting to me is that Bob Duncan becomes chancellor. And guess what? He is securing the vet school. He got it done. where the rest of us couldn't get it done. And we asked him.
This is about a vet school, and it's about a chancellor at another university that has a long political career with a lot of political power. I mean, you can't take politics out of the politics.
We took a look at the politics, digging through campaign finance records and millions of donations to discover every single Texas Tech regent had donated thousands to Governor Greg Abbott as of this August. And all but one donated to the governor who appointed them. But that seems to be common practice across the state, with all but one University of Texas regent donating to the governor, and the same for Texas A&M. How political can those spots on the Board of Regents get?
The positions, of course, are political because they're appointed by the governor.
But Sitton says politics should never get in the way of the greater goals of the system.
Because the commonality that all board members have is their love, care, concern for Texas Tech. And every decision made by a regent should have that goal in mind.
The board says the mission is still the same in spite of these leadership changes.
We may have reshuffled chairs just a little bit, but I think you've got still all of the other people that have been behind the scenes working to make Texas Tech everything it can be.
And the governor says he's on board.
I have supported the vet school, and I will continue to support whatever the mission is.
With the new chancellor settling in and those legislative preparations continuing, Robert Duncan says he's just ready to be a volunteer for Tech and assist Chancellor Mitchell in any way he can.
He's the right choice at this time, and I think Ted and I work very well together. And in the legislative process, I know that we can work well together as well.
If and when that vet school comes on board, I'll be the first in line to name that after Senator Bob Duncan.
We reached out to A&M about all of this, and they're still against the creation of a second vet school. Their full statement, though, is up on our website. But during our reporting, we came across something else interesting. Wendy Sitton tells us she wonders what all of this would look like if the board was more diverse. In fact, she was one of just 12 women to ever serve on the Texas Tech Board of Regents. UT and A&M have similar makeups with 20 and 11 women serving on their boards, respectively. Sitton and many of you have also wondered about whether a board should feature a resident of that home university, for instance, Lubbock. Now, here's a look at where our regents live across the state. A while back, we asked the board about this. Take a listen.
It depends on how you define the diverse. If you just strictly go male-female, obviously not. But the other diversity that we're responsible for is we need to be represented around the state. To Houston, to Dallas, which is representative because that's where a lot of our students come from. You've got me, I'm from Abilene. And so I'm kind of in the West Texas portion of that. I think it's hard to get all of that diversity.
Lancaster added, we may see changes during the next round of regent appointments from the governor. And on a personal note, he says he'll be moving to serve from Lubbock this coming January. Now, we have a closer look at the makeup of all of these university boards and some other facts and figures on our website, everythinglubbock.com.